Live from the canyons of Vermont, it's amateur radio station K1GMM, where zip ties and duct tape are a man's best friend and cheese is always extra.
Okay, we got audio. Oh, my goodness. All right. You guys should be hearing me. I'm seeing the meter move. K1GMM, Steve with a cluster in the canyons of Vermont. How is everybody doing? Let's run through the list really quick. Tintillo, hola. I think Bill. I saw Bill in there. Bill. Greg, good to see you. Glenn, always a pleasure, buddy. Good Lord, what are you guys doing? Bunch of you guys in here. Peter, Glockaroony, how you doing, brother? Hope all is well on your end. Jared, Chuck, KK said, hey Chuck, how's it going? It was working, but what I did was I killed something. And, oh, that's right, I killed the ASIO for All driver, and it was piggybacked to the Tascam sound card. It was running on the external sound card, and you can't do that. It shut it right off, killed it. So I had to basically reload it into the stream. You got to love it. Martin, good to see you. Cluster. Okay, so let me tell you what's going on. So I've been playing on 160, as you guys know. And I'm fascinated and incredibly frustrated with 160 meters. I did some in-depth research today, and what I found, and this is specific to 160. Now the D layer, which we'll get into, comes into play on 40, 75, 160, right? There's not a lot understood, what I found out in relation to specifically the 160 meter band and the D layer. Even ON4UN, John Delvedier, the book Low Band dx'ing, there's a lot of mystery around that band. And what has happened, let me see if I can find it, and I'll put it up on the screen. What's happening, what I'm seeing is, let me get that. See if I can find it. I just thought of it just now, so I'll show it to you. The way... Now, before I go into that, you all know that I'm running an inverted L, 160 meter quarter wave inverted L, 60 feet up, 70, whatever, 70, actually I added 1.5 feet to it, so it's like 78 feet across the top, something like that, somewhere around there, 78.2 feet maybe. And so, with a folded counterpoise, which has been working extremely well. Now, the problem is I will get decodes. Now, I'm running FT8 now. Hey, Chezzy, how you doing? And KK7PW, good to see you. Yeah, kind of exactly, Chuck. This is what I'm finding out. But I want to understand it. I want to understand what the frick is going on with 160, because I know the antenna is working. But it's working 1 minute and not the next. So I got a screenshot of FT8 and I need to find it. I need to find it. No, that's not it. I posted it. I posted it on WhatsApp. And I cannot find it because I'm a cheese whacker. I know it's in here somewhere. And I know I mark it too, FT8. No, that's not it. Okay, I wanted to just prove it to you. So maybe if I stumble upon it, you're just going to have to take my word for it. Good heavens. Let me see if I... Okay, well, let me show you this. I'll show you this. So this is the FT8 run from last night. This is 160 meters. And I run anywhere from 5 to 20 watts. So, desktop only. So that is the FT8 run. That's not the FT. Okay, this is, yes it is, but this is showing current gray line. Ignore the gray line, okay? Because the gray line actually was over here. All right? And what I found the most fascinating about 160 meters, hey Gareth, how you doing? And Gardner. What I found incredibly fascinating about 160 is it will follow gray line to the minute. I mean, it is amazing. If you look right here on the screen, you'll see all of these decodes on the left, to the left side of that group. Now, gray line was literally right there. And I've been watching gray line as it moves across me, which I'm up here around this area right here. And as it moves west, I start picking up more and more decodes going west. And it is literally right to the minute. It's the most fascinating thing I've ever seen. Now, you know, you guys are saying, so what? Right? Now, here's the frustrating part. Look up here. See this? This is Mike 0 Echo Alpha X-Ray. I worked him last night on 20 watts FT8. And that is a 3,045 mile trip on 20 watts on an inverted L on FT8 on 160 meters. It can be done. My first contact was Italy over here. That was on 5 watts. And the night before, I had decodes here, UK, other parts of Western Europe. I had one in Scandinavia, Sweden. And I started to work 2 stations. One was a Lima Alpha, and I think the other one was a Sierra Mike. They picked me up. I was calling CQ. All right. But it wouldn't complete the cycle. It just wouldn't complete it. So, you know, it would start. FTA, it would pick me up. They'd hear me and they'd contact me, and then I'd go back to them, and everything would fall apart. And I couldn't get to the RST to actually get the contacts. And I wound it. Here's the frustrating part. I'm running 20 watts. I wound it up to 110 watts. Right full boat, as much as I could push without an amplifier. Nothing. I couldn't get it. So here's the frustrating part. And this is what I'm starting to realize on 160. Propagation does not work on 160 the way it does on even 75 meters, definitely not 40 meters, and going up. And what I'm about to get into is kind of like a primer on how all this stuff works. But I wanted to get into the 160 meter, the delayer effects or lack of after gray line once darkness comes on 160 meters. But it's a mystery. Even the experts just don't understand it. And what I'm finding out is that, you know what we all know is QSB, right? Signals come and go. And the ionosphere is like waves, right? And it's constantly changing. the D layer is so critical as far as these longer wavelengths and propagation, but the way 160 meters behaves is incredibly bizarre, and there's not a lot of understanding about how or why it works, the complexities of it, because what I'm finding out is the propagation is there, and then within a matter of a few seconds it's gone. And what I'm also finding out is if you guys are going to play on 160, this is what I'm noticing. Be in there before gray line. Start calling CQ and start watching the decodes. I would say 30 minutes before gray line. Pull up your gray line map, watch it. And I kid you not, there is a window, and it could be only a matter of just a few minutes, where bang, all of a sudden, like 3,000 mile plus contacts can be made on 160, and then it's gone. It's bye-bye. It's amazing. So let me get into the other stuff. I'm not gonna go on and on about that. Sent you the WhatsApp of top band. Oh, cool. Oh, thanks, Al. Yeah, let me grab WhatsApp here. I'll get this off screen, and then I'll see if I can drag the image. I don't think you guys will care. Let's see. Okay, let me go over to the desktop. Okay, here's the WhatsApp. This is the contact from last night, Mike 0 EAX. This was at 23:49:24. I'm not sure of the UTC right now because of the way the clocks went. But this was after gray line. After gray line. And if you look through this, right? So I was right here. I was right here calling CQ. Okay? This station transmitted over here. And you can see the ghost on the waterfall right there. Now, if you look up through the list of decodes, look at this. This is what I'm finding out is insane. There's virtually nothing from Europe. Nothing. And there could be times when this is just bombastic with Europe. And this is what'll drive you completely mad, okay? Like I said, it's here today, gone tomorrow. It's here one moment, gone the next. And another point I wanted to make is I was just calling CQ. And what I do on FTA, I know I'm digressing here a lot. I'm moving off of where I wanted to go, but I'll address this. Anybody who's going to play with this. If you notice the waterfall right here, see where this black area is? This is really black. I try to find a place to call CQ in a very, very black area, because even a very weak, like a -20, -24 decode, there'll be a little bit of hint of blue there, right? So I try to get a clean spot. So this is what I'm finding out. 160 meters is a total crapshoot. You have to pay attention to gray line. That's the first thing. Second thing is you have to move around. Like, this is important as well, because see, you don't know what stations 3,000 miles are hearing. You're not decoding what may be there. So you're going to be calling CQ on a frequency on part of the spectrum that is being wiped out on the other end. So they're not going to hear you. Okay, so it pays. Call like 3 or 4 times, and then click in a different area. Find a good clear spot and just click it while it's calling. Move. Just keep jumping around. Jump around, jump around. The third thing is timing. And this is the crapshoot. It's all about the timing, because the nature of the band, it pops open 1 minute and it closes the next. Literally, it could be 60 seconds. Just fortunate enough. Hey, Bill, how's it going? KC3ARD. And Paul's in here. Good to see you, Paul. You know, 160 meters is a total crapshoot. 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 It's amazing. It is just amazing. So I figured I'd just throw that stuff at you, and your results may vary, but this is what I'm seeing because this is new to me, 160, so I figured I'd share it. This is primarily a CW band. If you're going to DX on 160, do CW. However, FT8 has opened the door to weak signal stuff. And by the way, this map right here, once Gray Line has moved off the West Coast, on 5 watts, I can easily get into Pacific Northwest, up into British Columbia, all the way down the western coast of United States. Now, people say, well, I'd never worked further than 1,500 miles on 160. That's where the antenna comes in. Most people run cloud warmers, cloud burners. Now, the problem with dipoles, any type of antenna like that, it's going to be an NVIS antenna. I'm not convinced that an inverted L has a significant NVIS component to it, because stations, I'll give you an example, stations at approximately 100 to 150 miles around me. See you, Gardner. 100 to 150 miles radius around me, you'd think would be easily workable on 160. I've done it when I had the Cobra up. It was a walk in the park. Connecticut, New Hampshire, Western New York State. Pff, that's killer 160 meters stuff, right? Well, it takes 40 watts to get the same signal report on FT8 in that radius on an inverted L, and it takes 5 watts to get the equivalent signal report at 1,000 miles or more. So that, yes, Jared, and that's what I wanted to caution you guys about. Inverted L's, excellent antennas, but they will not do you any favors from what I'm seeing. If you want to work close in stations, NVIS, go with something else. But the problem is it's a very compact antenna. Michael, the vertical section goes up 60 feet. It's got a 1-to-1 choke current on there from Ballon Designs. It's a 5 kilowatt. It's about the best you can buy. And it runs a folded counterpoise. In the top section, I actually ended up adding about 1.5 feet of wire to drop the resonance down towards the FT8, down towards the bottom of the band. So the top section, I believe, goes up 60, and then it goes north along the horizontal section by 77.2 feet, I think it is. NC Photos, good to see you, man. W2CSI.com. All right, moving on. Here we go. So this is going to be kind of a first thing we're going to hit. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This is the setup for everything that goes on. So I figured I'd do this in text form so people can go through it. And this is extremely condensed, and this is bare bones. So basically, you have what's called a plasma frequency and a critical frequency and an MUF, which is the maximum usable frequency. The plasma frequency is the foundation. And I'm learning this as well, so I figured I'd throw this at you guys. So what is plasma? Plasma are basically free electrons. So matter is positively, and we all learned this back in science class, positively charged protons and negatively charged electrons. One or more protons are grouped together to form a nucleus while electrons swarm around them. This is called an atom, or what some people, I guess, what do they call it, an atomic particle. Radiation and particles from the sun can knock electrons away from the atoms. Okay, these are basically free electrons and positively charged ions. The amount of free electrons not attached to a nucleus that are present is called the electron density. In a plasma, the negative free electrons and the positive ions are attached to each other by the electromagnetic force. Now remember, electromagnetic radiation is basically what we use to communicate. All right, keep that in mind. HF and HF propagation. In a plasma, the negative free electrons and the positive ions are attracted to each other by electromagnetic force. Electromagnetic force, we all know that, but they are too energetic to stay fixed together as an atom. Okay. As a result, the free electrons and ions vibrate back and forth. All right. So basically, in a nutshell, the plasma basically free electrons. Now, these are electrons that have been knocked loose from the nucleus. They control what frequency of electromagnetic radiation will be transmitted through a layer. So that's why the plasma frequency is important. All right, so we're going to go to what's called the critical frequency. This is the real kicker, and this is what kind of made me snap to attention. Okay, so basically when your RF wave, your electromagnetic radiation from your transceiver goes screaming into that mess, you know, you've got, they hit the free electrons, and the electrons respond by moving. There's something in here that I never knew before, which is kind of interesting. The movement in of the electrons in turn generate their own electromagnetic field. This is the part that I didn't realize. We always talk about the bounce off the ionosphere, right? How you get a reflection. It's actually not a reflection. It's those free electrons being excited that generate, they regenerate that electromagnetic field. And here's the catcher: if the transmitted frequency is higher than the plasma frequency, then the electrons cannot respond fast enough and they are not able to generate their own EM. Hence, the maximum usable frequency. We've all seen the MUF. It's posted everywhere. You always want to stay no higher than the MUF when you're trying to work DX. And this is where this comes from. So the result is that the original transmitted emitted electromagnetic waves can pass right through the electrons unimpeded. But if the transmitted frequency is higher than the plasma frequency, then the electrons cannot respond fast enough. So that's the catch. The frequency of the wave that you transmit out of the transceiver that's going to the ionosphere has to be within a threshold. Otherwise, it's going to pass, the electrons can't move fast enough, so it's going to pass right through, and it's not going to actually generate an additional electromagnetic wave, which in turn is polar to the wave leaving your transceiver. In other words, it forces it back down to Earth. Hence, you see where I'm going? You kind of, when you think of the ionosphere as being reflective, it's kind of true, but it's really not how it works. I didn't know this before. I think this is fascinating. You know, so if the transmitted frequency is higher than your plasma frequency, the waves basically they're absorbed by the electrons, this causes the generation of the new electromagnetic waves that are in the opposite vertical direction. Here's the catch. This caused the generation of the new electromagnetic waves that are in opposite of the vertical. Remember, the wave going out from your transceiver is vertical. Direction of the original transmission. The effect of the free electrons in this case is to reflect the electromagnetic transmission back down towards the surface. Okay. So basically, I kind of summarize it by how fast the electrons can respond, and that has to do with the frequency and how that particular scenario is happening at any given moment. Now you're going to ask, well, how the heck do you know what the MUF is? Well, they have all this fancy gadgetry which basically pulses a signal into the ionosphere, and they can measure what the maximum usable frequency based upon what they see coming back. You see what I'm saying? So once it reaches a certain threshold, the signal doesn't come back because it passes right through into space. So that's basically yada, yada, yada. Hops and skip zones. I'll just show you this picture. This is something that is interesting to me, and I haven't been able to work this out. These are, you've heard people refer to skip zones. Up until, I would say, a while ago, I didn't know what a skip zone was. So, and I'm going to get on to delayer in a second, because that is huge. So this is just basically propagation, right? Okay, so when HF radiation, that vertical wave, they call it a sky wave or whatever you want to call it, heads in the ionosphere, and that frequency is below the MUF. It's refracted back down to the Earth's surface, right? It's also reflected back up at the same angle. Now, this is something you'll hear a lot of guys, and remember, guys, this is something for a ham that's just coming into the hobby, or somebody who's really never looked at this before. And I'm no expert. I'm just telling you what I've found. So, you know how there's a lot of talk. Let's say this is your transmitting station right here, right? And this is the curvature of the Earth. This is the Earth's surface. Now, common sense tells you, right, that you want the lowest angle of radiation to get the furthest distance, correct? I mean, we all know that. It makes sense. Hence, a DX antenna. Vertical ground plane, properly, what's called a textbook ground plane, has an excellent angle of, very low angle of radiation. Inverted Ls, they're pretty darn good for what they are. What I would call a compromised antenna. Every antenna is a compromise, but they're okay. If I had my way, I'd have a 3-element quad for 160 meters at about 1,100 feet off the ground. See what I'm saying? That's a compromised antenna. It can always be better. So, you know, if you look at this, just looking at this, you want your angle of radiation. If you're trying to work DX, I would say in excess of 1,500 miles and more. Get your angle of radiation as low as you possibly can get. Now, I will tell you, no antenna you ever put up. Hey, Randy, how's it going? No antenna you ever erect will make up for a poor location. Ever. It will never make up for a poor location. When you hear people talk about location, sorry, there is no substitute for good location. I can prove that easily. I could take the most massive array on the face of the Earth this world has ever seen and erect it here in this valley in the canyon. I could take, and this is for 80 meters, I can go to Prince Edward Island. There's a guy, there's a VE2, I believe it is, works DX into VK, Pacific Asia, every night on 75 meters. He has a single vertical, and his ground radials are literally laying in the ocean. He's on the water, and he works in there 20, 30 over. And he's just north of me. He's north by, I don't know, 400 miles. Probably he's up on the coast, but he's right on the bay. There is no substitute for location, period. Anybody who says there is, they're full of crap. No antenna you run. Basically, I could put up the biggest array known to man with the most amount of gain, and it will never outperform a single vertical element in a great location. It's just the way it is. It's a fact. Location. That being said, done. Okay, there's something in this that I found interesting. Right here, DX low angle radiation, why it's necessary to pattern antennas. We just talked about that. Higher skip zones may have stronger signals than the first skip zone. In other words, this skip zone right here, in this skip zone right here, the third skip, may have stronger signals than the first skip zone because rays at different transmission angles tend to spread out and fill in these gaps. Okay, this wasn't shown, and this was taken from a phenomenal website I kind of peruse. Because you think to yourself, well, there's no way that my signal is going to be as strong here as it is here. But that's not necessarily the case. You may be an S7 here and a 5 to 10 over here. You see what I'm saying? It's bizarre. So let's go over to all right, covered all that garbage. Here we go. Okay, D-layer. Now we're going to wrap things up. This is in direct relation to what I'm talking about, 40 to 160 meters. So the D-layer, first of all, the D-layer is present only during daylight hours. And you've heard a lot about D-layer absorption. Well, what the frick does D-layer absorption mean? Now, remember, you got your different layers of the ionosphere, right? You got your D layer, you got your E layer, you got your F1, F2 layer. Now the D layer is the one that's closest to Earth. Absorbs and attenuates radio communications in the low frequency and MF wavelengths, 40 to 160 meters. This is what I'm mostly referring to. You can go beyond that, but I'm just dealing with that now. Low frequencies attenuated more than higher ones. Okay, now you're probably wondering, well, why does, if the D layer is there's so much absorption in the D layer, why am I able to work 100 or 20 meters, 15, 17, 15, 12, 10? Why? If the D layer is blocking it? Well, remember what we talked about with the electrons, free electrons. Once you reach that threshold where you increase the frequency, so to the point where the electrons can't respond fast enough, it no longer reflects those signals. They pass through. So 20 meters, because it's higher in frequency than what the electrons and the matter in the D layer can react to, they can't react fast enough. It just allows it to pass through and go to the F layer, and that's where you get your skip on 20 meters and up. So you guys can kind of read down through that. Countless millions of electrons vibrating. The amount of energy lost becomes noticeable and manifests itself as a reduction in the overall signal level. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, I talked about signal to noise ratio. Excuse me. This is something people always refer to signal to noise ratio in regards to audio, right? That's in different, like everything I do as far as antennas has to do with signal to noise ratio. That's basically what this is. And if you read that middle paragraph right here, reduction overall signal level. The amount of signal loss is dependent upon a number of factors. One is the number of gas molecules that are present. The greater the number of gas molecules, the higher the number of collisions, and hence the higher the attenuation. Okay? It's like a brick wall. That's why when you get on, let's say 40 meters. 40 meters is kind of, it's not a hybrid like 30. I look at 30 meters as a hybrid. It's in that frequency range that's a little wonky. You can get DX on 30 meters almost pretty much at any time of the day. 40 meters, no. 40 meters definitely has a time where it stretches out long, But now you enter into the gray line factor. Let's bring gray line to this, right? So on 40 meters opens, it opened, probably began to open at 2 p.m. Now that is 3 hours away from gray line. That's still 3 hours into daylight. And yet 40 meters is stretching out long. So really, to get into this delayer stuff, to get deep into it, you have to go to 75, 80 meters and then 160 meters. Because that's, remember the wavelength. 40 meters is on the verge. It's just high enough in frequency to allow signals to pass through at an earlier time before gray line. 75, 80, and 160, absolutely not. So, because they're lower in frequency, you're talking 3 megahertz and 1 to 2 megahertz. So, signals lower in the radio frequency spectrum are attenuated far more than the higher frequencies. Higher frequencies signals still suffer some reduction in signal strength. So that's basically it in a nutshell. You know, so I figured I'd throw this stuff at you guys and see what you thought about that. And the delayer is the part that is most fascinating to me, because that is the most important layer to understand if you're going to do any low band dx'ing. Hands down. Delayer, do some reading on the delayer, because that'll help you understand. Now, you know, do some reading on gray line, the effects of gray line. I was reading today that oftentimes there'll be a very small window where the delayer absorption will start to wane, and all of a sudden, boom, you'll get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 mile hops of contacts. You'll see it. And it can happen in a matter of just a few seconds, and that's what I'm noticing, and it's amazing. But you know, just do some looking around on that stuff and experiment. We are all pioneers on the 160 meter band, because there's not a lot. The experts, the consensus is out. There's not a lot of information. There's just not a lot of consensus on how 160 meters works from a DX aspect. If you think about that wavelength, yeah, you can go to 40 meters, right? And you can hear all kinds of DX. AM broadcast band pouring in 20, 30 over. Above 7.2 megahertz. What's the big deal? Anybody, he can do that off a freaking 6-foot whip. Seriously, you can. You know, but down in that wavelength, you know, 1.8 to 2 megahertz, to get that kind of distance, it's amazing when you think about it. So anybody who's going to erect an antenna for 160, in this next year, I want you guys to stay in touch and tell me what you're seeing. Do some weak signal stuff. Log all of your information. Log the times, when you make the contacts. All of my long distance contacts are coming at a very specific time. And it's usually it's not before gray line, it's right at gray line. Now, as opposed to 75 meters, I get a lot of contacts just as gray line is about to hit. But once we get about an hour past gray line on 160, it becomes impossible. Oftentimes they're there. And this is something else I read about 162. It can matter where you are. In other words, you know how we all look at 6 meters, right? Sporadic E. And a guy 50 miles away from you could actually work 3,000 miles on 6 meters, and you ain't hearing jack squat. That's kind of the way 160 is. It can be a guy 50, 30 miles from you may easily work across the pond and the window will close, and here I won't even hear him. And we could be running the exact same antenna. So it's just really cool stuff. Anyways, I am going to shut this down. I figured I'd throw this at you guys, and I may be back later. And you're welcome, Joe. I figure maybe this will prompt you guys to do a little reading and research. And if you find something out, let me have it, man, because I'm fascinated by this stuff. But I just wanted to kind of do this in a very compartmentalized, very basic, fundamental way, to get from point A to point D. You know what I'm saying? Jack squat. Jack is a guy who likes to squat. So I'm out of here. There's one thing I'm going to leave you with. I'm thinking about enhancing the interactive element of the stream. And maybe do this once a month, maybe once a week. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on this. Zello. I don't know how many of you guys use Zello. Okay, I'll answer that, Jared, in a second. So if you guys know what Zello is, go ahead and download Zello on your computer or your phone. Doesn't matter. It's got an Android app. I think it works on iPhone as well. Download Zello if you're interested in this, and I will actually bring Zello into the stream. So instead of using the chat, what I'm thinking about doing is taking a pre-stream check-in. People can come in after the fact, but I'm going to have to kind of work through how that works. There will be specific times where somebody can come in, like Jared, you just asked a question. Perfect. So you can ask the question, and maybe somebody else can answer on Zello, and it will all be fed into the stream. So I think that's a pretty cool thing to do, actually. It's like taking calls on a radio show, and it will relieve pressure off for me because I can let you guys have at it, because some of you guys know a heck of a lot more than I do about a lot of this stuff. So it'd be nice to let you have at it and put your 2 cents in. So let me know about that. Anyways, what I'm thinking about doing, it is 3:40, coming up to 3:45. So I'm thinking I may light up at about 4:45. So 4:45, 2 hours from now, FT8 on 160, and I'm going to try this. And I may stream it. And if you guys, I'm going to keep my mouth shut most of the time. You guys can just watch and see what happens. I'm telling you. It's like watching paint dry, but it's the most fast, because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you could be running like 20 watts on 160 meters. All of a sudden, some guy comes back to you from 3,000 or 4,000 miles away. People, I listen to guys on 160, and they're like, oh my God, I've never made a contact outside of 1,500 miles on 160. That's impossible. I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not, and it's easy to do. Okay, I will stream it. I'll just launch it. So look for it 2 hours. It's going to go off about 2 hours from now. So I'll catch you guys later, 7-3. And thanks for jumping in. I hope I did this right. But I'll leave it up to you guys. Kind of do your own thing. All right, 7-3. We'll catch you later, K1GMM. Jared, hopefully you're still watching this. I just want to let you know I saw your question. I want to answer it. I export the ADIF to my desktop from Log4OM, and then I just upload it to QRZ. That's how I do it. I think there's people that can. I think there's a way to do it automatically. I don't know. I couldn't answer that for you, so I figured I'd just throw that at you. All right, guys, catch you later.